So it's Pride Month! At least in the US. I missed out New Zealand's Pride Month and I really wanted to post a video on this, so here I am. Hey guys, it's Amy here, back again with another video. With June at least being the Pride Month in the US, and probably the one that is most talked about because a lot of people live in the US. I really wanted to do something for it, and for a while I didn't really know what to do because before I never really identified myself on the LGBTQ+ spectrum. It wasn't until recently that I defined myself as being on the asexual spectrum. Being asexual means that you experience very little sexual attraction or romantic attraction in some cases compared to the rest of the population. And that is what I identify as. I mean, look, I've got an asexual dice on my wall. Well, how more asexual can you get? So I just really wanted to talk about my asexuality in the context of writing and creating stories. This may not necessarily be about how to write an asexual, this is just my experiences and topics surrounding asexuality and portrayals of romance and asexuality in the media. I think one of the earlier signs that I was actually on the asexual spectrum was when I was looking at all these movies that had all these romantic subplots in them, and I just wondered why they were there. I never thought a romantic subplot would be necessary because a lot of them to me felt rushed, unearned, or just weird. In terms of where I am on the asexual spectrum, I class myself as graysexual. Graysexual means that I have to develop a very deep connection with somebody before I consider going out with them or I consider that I have a crush on them. Makes sense considering my first and only boyfriend I knew since primary school and we didn't start dating until our senior year of high school. For me, this even goes for celebrity and fictional crushes. Just because I find somebody hot or good looking does not mean that I will instantly want to go out with them. I don't feel anything down here or in here. That's not to say I don't find anybody hot or attractive. I know when people look particularly hot or particularly beautiful, it's just not a turn on for me. It's often once I've spent a great deal hanging out with somebody or watching a particular celebrity in YouTube videos, for example, or I read a lot about a certain fictional character that I actually start to develop a serious crush on them. I find a great more deal of value and attractiveness in personality than I do in looks, and I usually have to go very deep down to find that. And myself in my current state of life, because I understand that gender and sexuality is fluid, I don't really see being in a relationship necessary. It'd be nice to have a partner, which right now for me would be a boyfriend, but it's not going to be something that I will grasp on for and try to get with every inch of my being. I won't bend over backwards to find a boyfriend, I'm not gonna download Tinder, I'm not gonna download Bumble, that shit is scary for little introverted me. And I guess this view on how I see romance has also shaped how I feel about a lot of romantic tropes that are seen in the media. This includes people putting their relationship first, doing a very big gesture for someone just because you find them hot and you barely know them, and people who put themselves down because their life is perfect except that they're not in a relationship. I just thought, surely nobody puts pride in their relationship status so much. It just didn't seem realistic for me, neither did having every main character in the media be in a relationship. I've never defined myself or my goals by my relationship status throughout my... Oh no, wait, there was that one time when I was like 10 or something when I said I was never going to get a boyfriend until I was 16 or older. Exceeded that by 2 more years. It really got me worried, especially seeing girls in the media who were upset because they weren't in a relationship. They like looked down on themselves and their self-esteem because they weren't in a relationship. And it got me worried that people like that actually existed. And then I realized how many girls were considered repulsive for being single in the media. Romantic subplots to me are just overdone and overrated. I can confidently say that I have one pairing out of all the media that I consumed that I genuinely ship. This is from Secret by Bridget Kemmerer. You can check out a review of it on my blog. It's pretty good. Other pairings that I have read or seen are just too rushed, unearned, or just don't make sense at all. First off are the rushed aspects. There are moments where I would have considered them being in a good relationship, but then along comes the page number limit, the word limit, or the 2-hour time slot, and it ends up happening way too quickly. For me, that just doesn't make sense. It's like they barely got to know each other and all of a sudden they're in a relationship. I don't have time to connect with the characters and see them bond in a meaningful way. For me, that's what my gray sexuality is about. I need to find something meaningful or valuable in this person to the point where I will actually consider dating them. This leads to relationships being unearned. As I said before, as an asexual, there has to be something in a person, something meaningful in them that will get me to date them, not like in a true love at first sight kind of way. Of the 5 or so real and fictional people that I have developed a crush on, the 2 key things that I have discovered between them was a sense of humor that resonated with me, and them being really kind and wanting to spend time with me. I mean, some of it was forced because I was either watching their videos or reading about them, but that's still valuable time with me. It would take me very long for me to care about a person in that way. It could take at least a year in some cases. This is mainly because I'd wind up knowing a lot of things about them before I'd end up falling for them. For many protagonists in books who find love, it just doesn't end up feeling earned because they haven't taken the time to know each other. For instance, I do not ship Ron and Hermione from the movies. Not at all. They do piss all for each other and then they just kiss in the middle of Deathly Hallows. While that may be a bit more realistic for some people, it is not in my perspective. In the books, I prefer their relationship much better because they actually do stuff for each other to show that they care. They don't just care for each other. You can definitely see the connections that they're making and then suddenly doing very big feats in order to care for each other. But of course the movie didn't cover that at all, and so their relationship just turned into shallow lovey-dovey kissy-wissy. And then there's the relationships that just don't make sense, where they either take each other for granted or it just exists because every story has to have a romantic subplot. To me, a relationship is like having tomato sauce on your hot chips. It does make them better in some cases, but they still taste absolutely divine without the sauce. It feels nice to be in a relationship, but it's also just as nice to be single. This is how I feel about romantic subplots. They are everywhere. Thus it makes it obvious to find these moments where romance is bad, where it's either unearned, rushed, or doesn't make sense at all. A romantic subplot is no longer seen as a trope. It becomes as necessary as a turning point, a climax, or a resolution. It just becomes a story beat you need to make a story work. And I don't think that's ideal representation of romance, especially with asexuals existing in this world. That's not to say I'm totally against writing romance. I just think it has its time and place and it needs to be able to make sense in the context of the story. I can actually be pretty romantic if I wanted to be, despite my grey sexuality. I literally fell for one of my crushes while they were singing a love song. How much more cheesy can you get? One way that I show that I'm good with romances is the sexualities of the Dungeons & Dragons characters that I play. I have a bard who's pansexual, I have a warlock who actually had a relationship with a party member for a majority of the campaign, and then I've got a paladin who is asexual and doesn't really consider having a relationship at all at any point in her life. But like I said, when you're writing moments, there has to be some kind of moment, grand gesture, or connection that needs to be obvious between the characters before I would consider shipping them or consider them a really, really well-written romance. In ASTER'S CODA Exposure, my book that's coming out in July, there isn't a romantic relationship in book 1, but we see it start to develop more and more in book 2, 3, and so on. This is because my main character during book 2 and 3, Abby, she is looking for some kind of security and somebody to confide in, while her love interest that will end up being revealed, I don't want to give away spoilers, they are redeeming themselves to Abby. First out of guilt, but then out of just genuine care for her and wanting to make sure that she is happy. Abby is bisexual, for the record. That's why I used they, because the pronouns could potentially be a spoiler and I want to leave it open. But I think this perceived need for romance is why people typically don't write main characters who are asexual or on the asexual spectrum. I had an idea once that commented on that. It was a sci-fi detective type thing where all these cyborgs or people with robotic implants were being killed because a parasite got into the cyborg implants that were like electronically controlled and ended up poisoning their blood. The detective was asexual and also had cyborg implants herself, and she was able to find the killer and identify who it was. But this killer was an actual humanoid parasite, And basically what they did is that they aroused their patients, or prey, I should say, and they ended up becoming more susceptible to getting that virus and dying when it gets into their blood system. But that did not happen with my main character because she was asexual. I am realizing that is actually problematic. I am so glad I didn't go ahead and write that, and I got bored of it in the 3 years that I came up with it. But I guess because I'm still understanding aspects about my gray sexuality and asexuality, I haven't quite come up with a suitable story for it yet. I really want to write a story with the protagonist being asexual. It's just all the other stories that I've had very romantically formed plot points, where romance is actually very much a key part of the latter parts of the story continuing. I'm sure I'm gonna come up with one someday, it's just I don't want to just shove someone in there who is asexual. I kind of want there to be a little bit more meaning behind it. I don't want to falsely treat aces as being superior or inferior. I just want to have a story where it makes sense to have an asexual character. I'm sure I'll come up with one someday. I guess what overall I'm trying to say as a gray sexual writer is that romance doesn't have to be a necessary part of the story. Romantic subplots should only be there to add more value to your story, not to please everybody looking out for romance. Because for a gray sexual like me, romance is very rare. Attraction, whether sexual, romantic, or otherwise, is very rare. And it should be very valued to someone like me. And I think all relationships should be very valued like that. And there we go, there's my asexual and gray sexual rant over. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new around here. Ring that bell so you can find out when I post more creative content. ASTER'S CODA is coming out this July. If you love science, fantasy, and lots of fantasy-filled battles, this is the book for you to get, and I really hope you guys enjoy reading it. Apart from that, stay creative, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.